We need that trust money for the wedding. Stop being so selfish. My mother's voice sliced through the phone, sharp and demanding. I sat alone in my quiet home in Phoenix, Arizona, still wearing the same black dress from yesterday, still feeling the dry dirt on my hands from burying my son with my own shovel. I understand, I said softly. My name is Allison. I'm 35 years old. 2 days ago, I buried my 9-year-old son, completely alone, while my parents and sisters celebrated her engagement across town. They knew about the funeral. They chose to party instead. The silence on the other end of the call stretched so long that I thought Mom had hung up. Then she cleared her throat. Good. Patricia needs $12,000 for the catering deposit, and we thought Tyler's trust fund could cover it. You're the executor, so just write the check. Tyler, my bright, gentle boy who loved dinosaurs, who could name every type of velociraptor, who faced leukemia for 3 long years with more bravery than most adults ever show. He died holding my hand, asking if Grandma and Grandpa were coming to see him. The lawyer will need a few days to process everything, I replied, keeping my voice calm even though anger was rising inside me. A few days? Allison, the venue needs payment by Friday or Patricia loses her spot. Can't you just transfer the money from your account and reimburse yourself later? I closed my eyes, remembering how I'd begged them to delay Patricia's engagement party, just 1 day, so they could attend their grandson's funeral. Mom had simply said, "Honey, Tyler wouldn't want us to be sad. He'd want us to celebrate family happiness." Family happiness. While I stood over my child's grave, covering his small coffin with my bare hands because the funeral workers had already left. "I'll take care of it," I told her. "Perfect," she said. "And Allison, try to stay positive. Patricia's wedding will be a fresh start for everyone. We need to move forward from this difficult time." The call ended. I set the phone down and walked into Tyler's room. His dinosaur posters still filled the walls. His favorite stuffed triceratops rested on the unmade bed. We had lived here for a year, ever since I moved back to Phoenix to be closer to family during Tyler's treatment. What a mistake that turned out to be. My parents lived just 20 minutes away in Scottsdale, in the large house Dad bought after his accounting firm became successful. Patricia, my younger sister by 3 years, lived in their pool house while planning her perfect wedding to a real estate developer named Brad. When Tyler was first diagnosed, they seemed supportive. They visited the hospital, brought flowers, said all the right things about being there for us. But as the months passed and his condition worsened, their visits became fewer. They were busy. Dad had clients. Mom had her garden club and book group. Patricia had wedding dresses to try and venues to tour. The breaking point came 6 months ago. Tyler was back in the hospital for another round of chemo. He'd been asking for Grandpa to come read him his favorite dinosaur stories. I called Dad's office 3 times that day, but his secretary kept saying he was in meetings. That evening, I saw Patricia's Instagram story, a family dinner at their favorite steakhouse, Mom, Dad, Patricia, and Brad, all smiling over expensive wine and perfect meals. The timestamp showed it was posted while Tyler was in pain, throwing up from treatment, asking why his grandparents didn't love him anymore. I should have realized then what I know now. When forced to choose between comfort and commitment, they would always choose comfort. Tyler's trust fund had been created by my late husband's family after his death in a car crash 4 years ago. $50,000 meant to secure Tyler's future, college, maybe a home someday. When Tyler was diagnosed, I was grateful for that fund, though I never touched it. My job as a nurse at Phoenix Children's Hospital paid enough for us to manage, and I wanted that money to stay his. Now Tyler was gone. And legally, as his mother and executor of his estate, the money was mine. But my family didn't know what I had already done with it. 3 weeks ago, when Tyler's doctors told me his time was short, I made a decision. I called the lawyer managing the trust and asked if it could be donated in Tyler's name. "Of course," he said. "We just need your signature as executor." I spent hours researching children's cancer organizations, studying their programs, their results, their stories. I wanted Tyler's legacy to help other kids fighting the same battle he had fought so bravely. The paperwork had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. Every dollar of that $50,000 had already been donated to the Children's Cancer Research Alliance, establishing a memorial fund in Tyler's name. The irony was striking. While my family planned parties instead of supporting their grandson in his final days, I was making sure Tyler's memory would live on in a meaningful way. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee, thinking about the family dinner planned for tomorrow. Mom called it a healing gathering, a time to process grief together and discuss Patricia's upcoming wedding. She had insisted I attend, even though I told her I wasn't ready to face people yet. But I would go. I'd sit at their table, listen to the wedding chatter, and wait for the right moment to reveal what I had already done with Tyler's trust fund. Seeing their reaction would be worth every ounce of the pain they'd caused. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Mom says you're being super generous with Tyler's money. You're the best sister ever. I smiled for the first time since the funeral. The next evening, I drove to my parents' home in Scottsdale, passing the cemetery where Tyler rested beneath the small headstone I had chosen myself. No one had offered to help with those arrangements. They had been too busy tasting wedding cakes. The house looked exactly as it always did. Perfectly trimmed lawn, luxury cars in the driveway, warm light spilling from the windows, a picture of success hiding deep cracks beneath the surface. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering strength. Inside that house were the people who should have loved Tyler unconditionally, who should have been by his side in his final weeks. Instead, they treated his illness as an inconvenience and his death as a disruption to their plans. Dad opened the door before I could knock, wrapping me in a hug that felt more like a performance than affection. Allison, sweetheart, we're so glad you could make it. Your mother made your favorite pot roast, my favorite pot roast, as if a meal could erase their absence when Tyler needed them most. The dining room was set with Mom's best china, the kind reserved for special occasions. Apparently, deciding how to use my late son's money counted as one. Patricia and Brad were already seated, Patricia glowing with excitement, Brad scrolling on his phone, clearly uninterested. There she is! Patricia exclaimed, jumping up to hug me. I'm so sorry I couldn't make it to the funeral. The florist appointment was booked months ago. You know how hard it is to get the good vendors. While I was burying my son, she was choosing centerpieces. Mom came out of the kitchen with a platter of perfectly sliced roast, her face bright with practiced cheer. I thought we could have a nice family dinner and talk about moving forward. We've all been through so much these past few years. We had been through so much, as if she had been the one sleeping in hospital chairs and holding Tyler's hand through every treatment. I sat in my usual seat, the same chair I'd used during childhood dinners. Tyler used to sit beside me when we visited, full of questions and laughter, doing his dinosaur impressions. The empty space next to me felt enormous. So, Dad began, cutting into his roast. Your mother mentioned you're willing to help with the wedding expenses. That's very generous, especially with everything you've been dealing with. Tyler would want us to celebrate happiness, Mom added quickly. He was such a joyful boy. He'd want his money to go towards something beautiful. I nearly choked on my water. Tyler would have wanted his money to help sick children, not pay for a wedding hosted by people who didn't even attend his funeral. Patricia leaned forward eagerly. I've been thinking of a meaningful way to honor Tyler at the wedding. Maybe a small memorial table with his photo, something tasteful that doesn't bring down the mood. A memorial table. A photo. After ignoring him completely, she wanted to turn his memory into wedding decor. That sounds lovely, I said calmly. Brad finally looked up from his phone. How much are we talking about anyway? The trust fund amount? There it was, the real reason for this dinner. It wasn't about grief, healing, or family unity. It was about money. $50,000, Dad said proudly, as if he had earned it himself. Tyler's father's family had set up the fund after the accident. A smart investment. The boy won't be needing it now, so it might as well be used for something that brings the family happiness. The boy won't need it now. Tyler had a name. He was their grandson, but to them, he'd become nothing more than a source of funding for Patricia's perfect day. I actually have some good news about that, I said, setting down my fork. I was able to make arrangements I think Tyler would have really appreciated. Patricia clapped her hands. Did you already move it to the wedding account? Oh my gosh, this means we can upgrade the band. I found this amazing group that plays at celebrity weddings. Not exactly, I said, watching their faces closely. I donated it to the Children's Cancer Research Alliance, every penny in Tyler's name. The silence that followed was absolute. Mom's fork dropped to her plate. Dad's face turned pale. Patricia opened and closed her mouth like a fish struggling for air. You what? Mom whispered, I established a memorial fund in Tyler's honor, I explained calmly. The money will go toward research that might help other children battling cancer. It felt like the right thing to do. The right thing? Patricia's voice rose sharply. Allison, that was my money, for my wedding. Actually, it was Tyler's money, I corrected. And now it's helping children going through what Tyler went through, children whose families stand beside them. Dad found his voice trembling with anger. You can't do this. We'll contest it. We'll get lawyers involved. You had no right to decide that on your own. I had every right, I said quietly. I was Tyler's mother and the executor of his estate. The donation was completed legally 2 weeks ago. The money's gone. Mom's calm facade finally broke. How could you be so selfish? Patricia's been planning this wedding for a year. Do you have any idea how much everything costs? How many deposits have already been paid? Selfish. They were calling me selfish for honoring my son's memory instead of funding their celebration. Maybe you should have thought about that before deciding your grandson's funeral wasn't worth attending, I said, standing up from the table. The room erupted. Patricia was crying. Brad muttered curses under his breath. Dad was shouting about legal action. Mom listed every way I'd supposedly disappointed the family. Their anger only confirmed what I already knew. They cared more about money than they ever had about Tyler. I walked toward the door, leaving them with their outrage. Tomorrow would bring phone calls from lawyers, threats, and demands to undo what couldn't be undone. But tonight, I would go home to Tyler's room and tell his stuffed triceratops about the children who would live because of his legacy. The real battle was only beginning. 3 days after that disastrous dinner, I sat in lawyer Jonathan Pierce's office downtown, listening to him explain why my family's threats were meaningless. The donation was executed properly and legally, he said, reviewing the paperwork spread across his polished desk. As Tyler's mother and the court-appointed executor of his estate, you had full authority to make charitable distributions. They have no legal standing to challenge it. I nodded, unsurprised. The satisfaction wasn't in the legality of it, but in the principle. Tyler's money was helping children who truly needed it, not paying for a party thrown by people who'd abandoned him. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since that dinner. Mom called every few hours, switching between tears and anger. Patricia sent long, emotional messages accusing me of ruining her life. Dad left voicemails threatening to remove me from his will, as if that mattered after everything I'd seen. But the call that surprised me came that morning, from my Aunt Grace, Dad's older sister in Denver. She'd heard about Tyler's death through the family grapevine, though no one had told her about the funeral. I'm flying in this weekend, she said. We need to talk. Grace had always been the outsider in Dad's family, the one who spoke uncomfortable truths and refused to play along with their polished image. She'd moved away from Phoenix 30 years ago, visiting only for major holidays, usually leaving early after another argument about family values. When Tyler was younger, Grace had been one of his favorite relatives. She sent him books about dinosaurs, called to hear his discoveries, and truly listened when he spoke. After his diagnosis, she visited him in the hospital several times, bringing puzzles and games to pass the long treatment days. She was one of the few family members who genuinely cared about Tyler as a person, not as a duty. I spent the rest of the week ignoring my parents' increasingly desperate calls and focusing on work. The hospital was a welcome distraction, surrounded by colleagues who had supported me during Tyler's illness. My supervisor had offered bereavement leave, but I'd chosen to return early. Staying busy helped keep the grief bearable. On Friday evening, I picked Grace up from the airport. She looked the same. Silver hair neatly tied back, wearing jeans, and a simple sweater, carrying one small bag despite staying for a week. At 62, she had the calm authority of someone who'd spent decades as a school principal. How are you holding up? She asked as we drove home. Better than expected, I admitted. Angry, but better. Good, she said. Anger can be useful. It means you still expect people to do better. We drove in comfortable silence. Grace had always known that not every moment needed to be filled with words, a quality that had made her one of Tyler's favorite visitors. She could sit with him quietly during treatments, reading or solving puzzles without forcing cheer or asking him to be positive. At home, I made some coffee and showed her Tyler's room, the one I still hadn't found the strength to change. She picked up his favorite stuffed triceratops, handling it gently. He really loved this one, she said quietly. He'd told me its name was Herbert and that it was a herbivore, meaning it was kind and harmless. I smiled, remembering how he used to say he'd be a paleontologist someday. He wanted to discover a new dinosaur species and name it after me. Grace placed Herbert back on the bed and turned toward me. I heard what happened at the funeral, she said, and about the trust fund. I braced myself, expecting another lecture about family duty and forgiveness. Instead, she smiled. I'm proud of you. Those words hit me harder than I expected. I couldn't remember the last time any family member had said that. Your parents called me, she continued. They wanted me to talk some sense into you, to help them undo the donation. They think I can still influence you. What did you say? I asked. I told them Tyler's money should honor Tyler's memory. If they wanted to have a say in how it was used, they should have acted like grandparents while he was alive. We stayed in Tyler's room late into the night, sharing stories and reflecting on how my parents had changed. Grace had seen their shift firsthand, how they went from caring and grounded people to self-centered and distant ones. It started when your father's business took off, she said. Success changed them. They became used to being the center of everything, expecting the world to move around their plans. Everyone else just became background characters. That description was painfully accurate. Tyler and I had always been side characters in their story, expected to be grateful for whatever attention they spared and never to need more than they offered. The thing is, Grace went on, they still believe they're good people. They'll never see what they did as wrong. In their minds, they're the ones who've been hurt. You're just the ungrateful daughter who ruined Patricia's wedding. She was right. Even now, they probably saw themselves as victims. They'd convinced themselves that an engagement party mattered more than their grandson's farewell, and nothing could ever make them see how wrong that was. But I was done trying to make them understand. On Saturday, Grace came with me to visit Tyler's grave. I'd gone there every day since the funeral, bringing fresh flowers and talking to him about my day. This time, I brought a photo from the Children's Cancer Research Alliance, pictures of the kids who would benefit from his memorial fund. Look, Tyler, I said, kneeling beside his headstone. Your money is going to help these kids get better, just like you always wanted. Grace stood quietly beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. For the first time since losing Tyler, I felt someone in my family truly understood what I'd been trying to preserve. That evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Grace finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. What happens now with your parents? Are you planning to make peace with them? I thought about Tyler asking for them in the hospital, about their absence at the funeral, and their fixation on wedding expenses instead of grief. No, I said finally. Some things can't be forgiven. Some people don't deserve the effort. Grace nodded slightly. Good, you've got a backbone after all. Grace stayed the rest of the week, giving me the strength I needed to handle what came next. The day before she left, my parents showed up unannounced. I was in the garden, planting marigolds in the small memorial I'd created for Tyler, when I heard the sound of car doors outside. Grace was inside making lunch as footsteps approached. Allison. My father's tone was sharp, businesslike, the same voice he used with difficult clients. We need to talk. I didn't look up from the flowers. Tyler had loved marigolds. Their bright orange reminded him of his favorite dinosaur book cover. I don't think we do, I replied. Yes, we do, my mother said, her voice strained, like she'd been crying. This has gone far enough. You're tearing this family apart over money that could have brought us together. I stood up, brushing the dirt from my hands. They looked older, more tired than I remembered. Patricia stood behind them, her eyes swollen from tears. Brad wasn't there. Where's Brad? I asked. Patricia started crying again. He postponed the wedding. He says we need to sort out our finances before planning anything. This is all your fault. A flicker of satisfaction crossed my mind. There were finally consequences. Their perfect plans were starting to fall apart. The venue canceled our booking, my mother continued, voice rising. The caterer is keeping our deposit and won't do the event without full payment. Patricia's dress is already ordered and can't be returned. Do you realize how much money we're losing because of your selfish choices? Grace appeared in the doorway, drying her hands with a dish towel. She looked at my parents with the same sharp expression she used to manage unruly students back when she taught. Grace. Dad's tone shifted, suddenly polite but insincere. I'm glad you're here. Maybe you can help Allison understand reason. I can see reason just fine, Grace replied evenly. The real question is, can you? Patricia stepped forward, mascara streaking down her face. Aunt Grace, you don't get it. This was supposed to be the perfect wedding. I've been planning it for 2 years. Everyone's taken time off work, sent their RSVPs. Now I have to tell 200 guests it's canceled because my sister decided to throw money at strangers instead of helping her own family. Strangers? I repeated quietly. You mean children with cancer. You know what I mean? Patricia snapped. Kids you don't even know, who have nothing to do with us. Meanwhile, your real family is falling apart, and you don't even care. Their outrage was stunning. They were furious at me for helping sick children instead of funding Patricia's wedding, and somehow believed they were the victims. Tell me, I said, turning to Mom. What did you do the day Tyler died? Her face flushed. That's not fair. We were grieving too. You went shopping for bridesmaid shoes, I said quietly. I called at 3 p.m. from the hospital to tell you Tyler was gone, and you said you'd call back because you were at the mall with Patricia. That's not how it happened, Dad interrupted. It's exactly how it happened. And when I called again, crying, asking you to come over, Mom said she had book club and would see me later in the week. Silence filled the room. Grace looked disgusted. Patricia shifted uneasily. Your grandson died and you went to book club, I continued. You skipped his funeral for an engagement party. You never asked how I was coping, never offered to help, never even sent a card. But now you're here, demanding his trust fund money for Patricia's wedding. We're grieving too, Mom said weakly. No, I replied. You're inconvenienced. There's a difference. Patricia's tears hardened into anger. Fine, you want to punish us? Ruin my happiness because you're miserable? Congratulations, you won. Brad thinks I'm irresponsible now. He's questioning if I can even manage money. The wedding's probably off for good. I should have felt guilty about the impact on her relationship, but I didn't. I only felt a cold, detached sense of justice. Maybe Brad's right to question your priorities, I said. Maybe he realized that someone who chooses parties over funerals isn't the partner he wants. Patricia's face turned pale with fury. How dare you? How dare you judge my relationship when you couldn't even keep Tyler's father alive? The words hit like a slap. Even Grace gasped. Dad grabbed Patricia's arm, but it was too late. Patricia, that's enough, he said, though without conviction. I looked at my sister, the woman who had just blamed me for my husband's fatal car accident, and something inside me finally broke. Not in a sudden snap, but slowly, painfully, the last thread holding us together giving way. Get off my property, I said quietly. Allison. She didn't mean it, Mom started. Leave now, or I'll call the police. Grace stepped beside me, firm and steady. You heard her. Go. Dad hesitated, then took Mom's arm and led her toward the car. Patricia followed, still sobbing, throwing one last desperate plea over her shoulder. This isn't over, Allison. We're family. Family doesn't abandon each other like this. I watched them drive away, feeling lighter than I had in months. They were right about one thing. Family doesn't abandon each other. That's exactly why I was letting them go. Grace put her arm around me. Are you okay? I think so, I said, and realized I meant it. That evening, Grace and I sat on the back porch, sipping wine as the sunset painted the sky in orange and pink, Tyler's favorite colors. There's something I haven't told you, Grace said after a moment. About your parents and Patricia. I looked at her puzzled. They called me 2 months ago, right after Tyler's condition worsened. They wanted advice, my stomach clenched. What kind of advice? They were worried about how much time and money his care was taking. They wondered if it might be better to move him to a facility, somewhere, with professional care so you could focus on getting your life back. Together, the words sank in slowly. They wanted me to put Tyler in hospice. It wasn't exactly hospice care, more like long-term support, a place where he could stay comfortable while I decided what to do next. I felt physically ill. While I was fighting for every possible treatment and every extra moment with Tyler, My parents were quietly finding ways to remove him from their lives completely. I called them heartless, Grace said. I told them that if they couldn't stand by their daughter and grandson during the hardest period of our lives, they didn't deserve to be called family. That's when everything finally made sense. Their distance in Tyler's final months wasn't about being busy or emotionally drained. They saw him as a burden to manage, not a child to love. After Grace left for Denver, I threw myself into my work with renewed determination. The pediatric oncology unit at Phoenix Children's Hospital, Tyler's second home during treatment, became my sanctuary. The children there reminded me daily why the memorial fund in Tyler's name mattered far more than any wedding ever could. 2 weeks after my last confrontation with my family, I got a call that changed everything, Miss Allison, a young, hesitant voice said. This is Jennifer from the Children's Cancer Research Alliance. I work in donor relations. I assumed it was a routine follow-up about Tyler's memorial fund, perhaps paperwork or a thank you note. We received your donation in Tyler's name, Jennifer continued. It's extraordinary, and we're so grateful. But something unusual has happened. My stomach tightened. Had my parents found another way to interfere with the donation? What kind of unusual? I asked. Well, we've been getting calls, quite a few, from people claiming to be Tyler's grandparents and aunt. They're insisting the donation was made without family approval and demanding that the funds be returned directly to them. I sank into my kitchen chair. Of course, when legal tactics failed, they'd resorted to emotional manipulation, this time targeting a charity. They can't do that legally, I said. I was the executor. Oh, we know, Jennifer replied quickly. Our legal team verified everything, but the calls have become aggressive. Yesterday, a woman claiming to be Tyler's grandmother said the donation came from someone having a mental breakdown, unfit to make financial decisions. My face burned with anger and shame. They were attacking my sanity to reclaim Tyler's money, spreading lies that I was unstable and incapable of managing my own child's legacy. Jennifer hesitated before continuing. They're also accusing you of stealing the money, saying it was intended for a family emergency and that you redirected it to charity out of spite. The grandmother was crying, saying another granddaughter's life is being ruined because of it. I closed my eyes. My mother's performance must have been worthy of an award. I need to be very clear, I said firmly. Those people are not Tyler's family. His biological father passed away 4 years ago, and his family established the trust. My parents and sister abandoned him during his illness and didn't even attend his funeral. They have no moral or legal claim to that money. There was a pause, then a quiet sigh of relief. Thank you for clarifying, Jennifer said. We deal with family disputes sometimes, but this felt different, more malicious. Because it is malicious, I said. They're not grieving relatives honoring Tyler's memory. They're people willing to deceive a children's charity to fund a wedding. When I hung up, I sat trembling with anger. It wasn't enough for them to have abandoned Tyler. Now they were harassing the very organization helping kids like him. Their greed for Patricia's wedding money had reached new lows. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I contacted a local news reporter. Melissa Torres from Channel 12's investigative team had exposed charity frauds and family exploitation cases before. She agreed to meet for coffee after hearing a brief outline of my story. So let me get this straight, Melissa said after our hour-long conversation, reviewing her notes. Your parents and sister skipped your son's funeral to attend an engagement party, then demanded his trust fund for wedding costs. When you donated it to the Children's Cancer Research Alliance, they began harassing the charity and claiming you're mentally unstable? That's correct, I replied. Melissa shook her head. I've seen ugly family disputes, but this is exceptionally cruel. The charity angle makes it newsworthy, especially with false claims about your competency and attempts to reverse a legal donation. What would going public accomplish? I asked. Accountability, she said. People often change their behavior when they know others are watching. It'll also protect the charity by clarifying the legal facts. I thought of Tyler, of the children still fighting for their lives, and of my parents' willingness to attack a children's charity. Do it, I said. The story aired the following Thursday. Melissa had done thorough work. She interviewed Jennifer, confirmed the donation's legality, and gathered statements from hospital staff about Tyler's illness and my dedication as his mother. She withheld my family's names, calling them only relatives who skipped a child's funeral for a social event. Still, Anyone who knew us could piece it together. The segment was clear and factual. A mother who lost her child to cancer donates his trust fund to help others, while certain family members harass the charity to reclaim the money for personal use. A legal expert called their actions morally reprehensible and confirmed the donation was permanent. Before the broadcast even ended, my phone started ringing. The first call came from my supervisor, offering support and outrage on my behalf. The second was from Grace in Denver, proud that I'd finally stood up to them. The third was from Patricia, screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away. How could you do this to us? You made us look like monsters. Do you know what this will do to Dad's business? To my reputation? I told the truth, I said calmly. If that makes you look like monsters, maybe you should reflect on your actions instead of blaming me for exposing them. We're going to sue you for defamation, and the TV station too. This is character assassination. Good luck with that, I said before hanging up. The fourth call came from my father, his tone cold and deliberate. You've crossed a line, Allison. Going to the media, airing private family matters on TV, making us look like criminals. This ends now. You're right, I replied. It does end now. Don't call me again. You're making a mistake. Family is forever, and one day you'll need us. Don't burn bridges you may have to cross later. I thought of Tyler asking for his grandparents in the hospital. I thought of standing alone at his graveside while they celebrated across town. I remembered how they'd tried to convince a charity I was mentally unstable. I don't need people who'd abandon a dying child, I said. And I don't want ties to anyone who'd harass a children's cancer charity. Goodbye, Dad. That night, I blocked every number, feeling finally free to grieve Tyler properly, without their manipulation clouding my healing. The news story brought consequences I hadn't expected. Over the next week, I received dozens of messages from people who'd seen the report, parents, spouses, and adult children, all sharing stories of betrayal during their darkest times. Parents abandoned by family when their children fell ill. Spouses who discovered their partner's true character in crisis. Children who learned their parents' real priorities when tragedy struck. But the most unexpected call came from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my ex-sister-in-law. Diane, Tyler's father's sister. I saw the story, she said, her voice trembling. I can't believe they did that to you and Tyler. Kevin would be furious. Kevin, my late husband, Tyler's father, had died in a car accident when Tyler was 5. His family had been heartbroken, but they'd stayed in our lives, treating us as family despite the loss. The trust fund had been their idea, to secure Tyler's future. I need to tell you something about the trust fund, Diane continued. There's something you don't know. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Kevin's parents didn't just start it with $50,000. They've been adding to it every year on Tyler's birthday. The account now has over $80,000. I almost dropped the phone. What? They never told you because they didn't want you to feel pressured or think they doubted your ability to provide. Every year they added $5,000. They called it his future fund. My thoughts raced. If there was still money in that account, my parents' harassment of the charity had been even more senseless than I'd realized. But more importantly, it showed that Tyler's memory was protected by people who truly loved him, people who cared about his future even after losing their own son. Mom and Dad have been calling me since your parents started making threats, Diane said. They just want to be sure Tyler's memory is safe and that you're supported. They asked me to tell you that whatever you choose to do with the remaining funds, they'll stand by you completely. Tears filled my eyes, overwhelmed by the difference between Kevin's family's quiet compassion and my own family's selfishness. There's more, Diane added softly. They want to create a larger memorial fund in Tyler's name. They're ready to contribute another $100,000, maybe for a scholarship or a specific research project. Through tears, I whispered, Tyler would love that. He always wanted to help people. That's exactly why we're doing this. After our call, I sat in Tyler's room, absorbing it all. While my parents were harassing a charity over $50,000 that was already gone, Tyler's true family had been quietly building a legacy that could genuinely help fight childhood cancer. I contacted Jennifer at the Children's Cancer Research Alliance to discuss expanding the memorial fund. She was thrilled by the idea. A comprehensive program in Tyler's name that could support both research and families in need. With this funding, she said, we could launch the Tyler Memorial Program for Pediatric Cancer Research, one of our largest named funds. It would support multiple research projects and help families with treatment costs. It was perfect. Tyler's name would live on in a way that truly reflected who he was: brave, kind, determined, and compassionate even in pain. That evening, as I researched pediatric programs online, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Patricia standing on my porch, alone, smaller, and more defeated than I'd ever seen her. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "I'm not here to fight," she said quickly, hands raised. "I'm not here to ask for money or make threats. I just want to talk." I studied her. She looked genuinely worn down, her usual polished look replaced with messy clothes and tired eyes. "5 minutes," I said. She sat on the couch as if afraid it might collapse beneath her. For a long moment, she said nothing, just stared at her hands. "The engagement is off," she said finally. "Brad said he couldn't marry someone who would pressure a children's charity for money. He told me it revealed who I truly was, and he didn't like what he saw." I stayed silent, unsure if she wanted sympathy or was preparing for another argument. "I've been thinking about Tyler," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "About the funeral? About what we did? What I chose to do," she corrected herself. "I keep trying to justify it to make it seem less awful, but I can't. There's no excuse for skipping your nephew's funeral to plan a party." For a brief moment, I felt something close to hope, but I pushed it away. Patricia had always known how to say the right thing when it suited her. "I don't know how to fix this," she said, tears forming. "I don't know how to undo what we did, or make up for abandoning you when you needed family most. I don't even know if I'm a good enough person to deserve forgiveness." "You're not," I said quietly. She flinched, as if I had struck her, but nodded slowly. "You're not good enough to earn forgiveness," I continued. "And I'm not generous enough to give it. What you did to Tyler, to me, and to the charity, those things can't be erased by saying sorry." Patricia began to cry harder, but didn't argue or defend herself. "I ruined my relationship with Brad," she said, "because I couldn't let go of the idea that Tyler's money should have been mine. I convinced myself you were being spiteful instead of honoring your son's memory. I was so focused on what I lost that I never considered what you'd already lost." I looked across the room at the woman who had been my sister for 32 years and felt only emptiness where love used to be. "You're right," I said. "You can't fix this. Some things can't be repaired. Tyler needed his family, and they chose a party. I needed support, and I got demands for money. You showed me who you are, and I believe you." Patricia stood and moved toward the door. "I know this probably doesn't matter now," she said softly, "but I am sorry. Not because I lost Brad or because the family is upset about the news story. I'm sorry because Tyler was a wonderful boy who deserved better from all of us." After she left, I walked to Tyler's room and picked up Herbert the Triceratops. Patricia had been right about one thing. Tyler did deserve better. But he had received the best I could give him. And now, his legacy would help other children gain the support and research funding they needed. That was enough. It had to be. 3 months after the story aired, I got a call that would expand Tyler's legacy beyond anything I had imagined. "Allison, this is Dr. Robert Chen from the National Pediatric Cancer Institute," the voice said. "I'm calling about the Tyler Memorial Program. We've been working with the Children's Cancer Research Alliance to create an expanded memorial fund using the additional donations from Kevin's parents. The program launches next month, with funding to support both research and family assistance projects. We've been following Tyler's memorial fund closely," Dr. Chen continued. "And we'd like to propose something extraordinary. The Institute wants to partner with the Alliance to create the first nationally funded pediatric cancer research center named after a patient advocate." My hands trembled. "I don't understand." "Tyler's story has deeply impacted the medical community," Dr. Chen explained. "A 9-year-old boy whose trust fund inspired one of the largest family-supported research initiatives we've ever seen. We want to establish the Tyler Research Center, a fully funded facility focused on the type of leukemia Tyler battled." I sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Tyler's name wouldn't just help a few children. It would be attached to a research center that could improve survival rates for kids like him. "The total commitment will be $5 million over 10 years, Dr. Chen added. "The Institute will cover most of the funding, but we'd like the Tyler Memorial Program to act as the community liaison. You'd serve on the advisory board, guiding family support efforts, and ensuring the research remains connected to patient advocacy. After hanging up, I sat in Tyler's room holding Herbert, trying to process what had just happened. My curious, brave boy who had loved science and dinosaurs was going to have a research center in his name. Future children with Tyler's diagnosis would have treatments he never had, funded by the same trust money that once caused so much conflict. The irony was painful but beautiful. My parents had been fixated on $50,000 for a wedding, never realizing what that money could become when used selflessly. That afternoon, I called Grace to share the news. She cried over the phone, moved by what Tyler's memory had grown into. He'd be so proud, she said through her tears. He always wanted to help others. And now, he'll continue helping children for generations to come. 2 weeks later, an unexpected visitor arrived at my workplace. I was making rounds in the pediatric ward when the unit clerk informed me that someone was waiting for me at the nurse's station. It was my mother. She looked older than when I'd last seen her 3 months ago, somehow more fragile. Her usually polished look was gone. Her clothes were wrinkled, gray roots were visible through her dyed hair, and the makeup failed to mask the exhaustion in her eyes. "Allison," she said softly, "can we talk somewhere private?" I led her to an empty consultation room, the same kind where Tyler and I had so often received updates about his treatment. The irony was unmistakable. "I heard about the research center," she began, avoiding my gaze, "about Tyler's name being attached to it." I waited in silence. I also heard there was more money in the trust fund than we knew, that Kevin's parents had been adding to it. "Yes," I replied simply. So when we asked for the money, there was actually enough for both Tyler's memorial and Patricia's wedding? I stared at her, astonished that she still didn't understand. "No, Mom, there was never enough for both. Tyler's memorial was always the only rightful use of Tyler's money." She winced but pressed on. "Your father's business is struggling." The news story brought attention we didn't want. Some clients stopped working with him. They don't want to be linked to people who would abandon their grandson. Good, I thought, but said nothing. Patricia moved back home after Brad called off the wedding. She's been depressed, barely leaves her room. We lost nearly $20,000 between the dress, the venue, and other expenses. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no resentment, just emptiness where love for family used to be. "Your father and I have been talking," she continued, her voice barely audible. "We know we made mistakes. We know we hurt you and Tyler. We're hoping that maybe, with time, we can rebuild our relationship." "Why now?" I asked. "Why come after 3 months of silence?" Her mask slipped slightly. "Because we've lost everything that mattered, except you. Patricia's wedding was supposed to be our moment of pride. We had success, status, respect. Now it's all gone. And you think I can fix that for you?" "I think family should support each other during hard times," she said, but her tone sounded practiced. I stood up, finished with the conversation. "You're right. Family should support each other in difficult times. Tyler was your family during the hardest time of his life, and you abandoned him. I was your family while grieving my child, and you demanded money from me. Now that you're facing the fallout of your own choices, suddenly you remember what family means." "We're sorry," Mom said, her voice shaking. "We're truly, deeply sorry." "I believe you're sorry," I replied. "Sorry your actions had consequences. Sorry that people now see who you really are. Sorry that your comfort and reputation are gone. But you're not sorry for what you did to Tyler, because you still don't understand what that was." I walked toward the door, then stopped. Tyler's research center will be officially announced next month. There'll be a ceremony, media coverage, recognition for his legacy. Don't come. Don't contact me about it. Don't try to take part in something you had no role in creating. Mom began to cry, the kind of tears that come when someone realizes what's lost can't be recovered. "You're our daughter," she said. "Tyler was our grandson. We love you both," "No," I said quietly. "You love the idea of us and when it benefits you. Tyler needed grandparents who showed up, and I needed parents who cared. You proved that your choices are driven not by love, but by self-interest." The announcement of the Tyler Research Center took place at Phoenix Children's Hospital on a bright Thursday morning in February. The ceremony was held in the same conference room where Tyler and I had attended countless meetings with his OR care team, now transformed with banners, and displays highlighting the research his legacy would Fun. Dr. Chen opened the event, addressing an audience of medical professionals, hospital leaders, and members of the press. Jennifer from the Children's Cancer Research Alliance spoke about how memorial giving can turn grief into hope. Kevin's parents, Tyler's true grandparents, sat in the front row, eyes filled with proud tears. When it was my turn to speak, I looked out at the gathered crowd honoring my son's memory and felt a calm I hadn't known since before his diagnosis. Tyler used to ask me if the treatments were helping, I began. He wanted to know if the medicine was making him better, if the research was teaching doctors how to help other children like him. I always told him yes, that every day he fought, he was helping doctors learn how to win the battle against his disease. I paused, remembering those hospital conversations, his quiet courage, his determination to keep fighting because he believed it would make a difference. Tyler never lived to see the results of the research he contributed to. But today, his legacy ensures that same research continues, giving other children the hope he once had. The Tyler Research Center will focus on the specific type of acute lymphoblastic leukemia that claimed Tyler's life, with the goal of improving survival rates and the quality of life for children who face this diagnosis. The applause was warm and steady. In the crowd, I noticed Kevin's parents holding hands, Grace quietly wiping her tears, and several of Tyler's former oncology nurses smiling through their emotions. The center stood as a true reflection of Tyler's spirit. I continued. He was brave, curious, determined, and kind. Even at just 9 years old, he understood that fighting his illness wasn't only about his own survival, it was about contributing to knowledge that could help other children. This research center will carry forward those same values for generations. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and explored the displays of the center's upcoming projects, Grace approached me with a concerned look. "There are some people outside asking to speak with you," she said softly. "They say they're Tyler's grandparents." My parents had shown up after all, despite my clear request for them to stay away. Through the window, I saw them standing in the hospital parking lot with Patricia, all three looking uneasy and out of place. "Do you want me to have security ask them to leave?" Grace asked. I thought about it, then realized this might be the right moment to bring closure. "No, let me talk to them." I walked outside where my parents and Patricia waited beside my father's car. They appeared smaller somehow, weighed down by their own choices. "We just wanted to see," my mother said quietly, "to understand what Tyler's money became." "This is what it became," I said, gesturing toward the hospital behind me. "A research center that will help children live. A lasting legacy of hope, instead of a party that would have been forgotten in a day." My father stepped forward, his face showing the toll of the past months. "We know we were wrong. We know we hurt you and Tyler, but we're still family, Allison. We still love you. Do you?" I asked. "Do you love me, or do you love the idea of having a daughter now linked to a respected medical research program? Do you love Tyler, or just the reflected pride of having a grandson with a research center named after him?" Patricia spoke for the first time. "I know you have no reason to believe me, but seeing what Tyler's money created, and what his life meant to all these people, made me realize how wrong I was. I was so focused on my wedding, on my own perfect day, that I couldn't see beyond myself to what truly mattered." "That's the first honest thing you've said in years," I replied. "I've been thinking about what you said about some relationships not being repairable," Patricia continued. "You're right. What we did to Tyler, what we did to you, it can't be fixed with apologies. But I need you to know that I finally understand why you'll never forgive us." I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation or self-interest. Instead, I saw something unfamiliar, genuine remorse and awareness of what they had lost because of their own actions. "The worst part," she said, tears beginning to fall, "is that Tyler was an incredible little boy, and we missed the chance to truly know him because we were so wrapped up in ourselves. We can't get those years back. And now we can't even be part of honoring his memory because we gave up that right ourselves." My mother reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Please, Allison," she said. "We know we don't deserve forgiveness, but is there any way forward? Any chance to rebuild what we destroyed?" I looked at the three people who had shaped my early life, who gave me childhood memories and family traditions, but who had also abandoned their grandson during his final months and pressured a children's charity for money. They weren't monsters, but they weren't good people either. They were selfish, short-sighted, and had shown their true character when life tested them. No, I said simply. There's no way forward because you haven't really changed. You're here because Tyler's story brought you shame and consequences, not because you've developed real empathy for what he endured, or what I endured. You want back into my life now that it's successful and respected, but you weren't there when it was only grief and struggle. I turned to head back toward the hospital, then paused. Tyler deserved grandparents who were there for him unconditionally. I deserved parents who would have stood by me through the hardest time of my life. But you chose yourselves again and again. The Tyler Research Center will save children's lives, and you'll have no part in that legacy. That's not punishment, that's consequence. 6 months later, I stood in Tyler's room, packing the last of his things. I was moving to a smaller house across town, one without so many memories of illness and loss. Still, I carefully preserved everything that mattered. His dinosaur books, his favorite drawings, Herbert the Triceratops, and the framed photo from the research center's dedication ceremony. The center had exceeded all expectations in its first months. 3 research projects were already underway, 2 families had received emergency financial help, and 1 study's early results showed promise for improved treatment methods. Tyler's legacy was saving lives, just as he would have wanted. Grace visited that weekend to help me move. At 73, she still insisted on lifting boxes despite my protests, saying staying busy kept her young. "Any word from your parents?" she asked as we loaded the car with Tyler's carefully packed memories. "Nothing direct," I said. I'd heard that Dad's accounting firm had shut down last month. It seemed too many clients no longer wanted to work with someone who could abandon his own grandson. As for Patricia, still living with them, still single, she was clearly dealing with the aftermath of her own choices. Grace nodded when I told her. "Good," she said calmly. "Some people need to face the results of their actions before they can truly grow." As we drove to my new home, I thought about the year that had passed since Tyler's death. The grief was still there, it always would be, but it had shifted. It was no longer an unbearable weight, but a steady presence. A quiet reminder of loss balanced by pride in the meaning of his life. The new house was smaller but brighter, with a little garden where I could plant marigolds every year on Tyler's birthday. In the spare room, I arranged his dinosaur collection, turning the space into a gentle tribute, a celebration rather than a memorial. That evening, as Grace and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, she asked something I'd been avoiding. "Have you thought about dating again?" She asked softly. "I know it's still early, but maybe one day you'll want to share your life with someone new." I had considered it briefly, but the thought of explaining Tyler's story, of finding someone who could truly understand the depth of my loss, felt overwhelming. "Maybe someday," I said quietly. "For now, I just want to focus on the research center and settling in here." "That's fair," Grace replied. "Just don't let your parents' betrayal make you believe everyone's like them. Some people do show up when it matters." 2 weeks later, her words proved true. I got an unexpected phone call. "Is this Allison, Tyler's mom?" The voice was unfamiliar, nervous, female. "Yes, this is Allison." "Who's calling?" "My name is Sarah Chen. My daughter Emma is 8. She was just diagnosed with the same leukemia Tyler had. The doctors at Phoenix Children's mentioned the Tyler Research Center and suggested I reach out." My heart tightened with both pain and a flicker of hope. "How can I help?" I asked. Emma heard about Tyler's story, how brave he was, and how his legacy helps other kids. She wants to know if she can be brave like he was, if fighting her illness might help future children too. Tears filled my eyes, but I smiled. Tyler would have loved her spirit. He always said bravery wasn't about not being afraid. It was about fighting anyway, so someone else might have it easier. Sarah and I spoke for nearly an hour. She was a single mother, overwhelmed by the diagnosis and treatment ahead. Her family lived far away, and she was facing the same loneliness I had once felt. "Would you like to meet for coffee sometime?" I offered. "I can't make this easier, but I can make sure you don't face it alone." "I'd love that," she said with relief. "Emma keeps asking questions I can't answer. Maybe you can help me find the right words." After hanging up, I went to Tyler's memorial room and picked up Herbert the Triceratops. "You're still helping kids be brave," I whispered. "Just like you wanted." In the months that followed, I became a mentor and support system for families facing pediatric cancer. The Tyler Research Center provided medical hope, but these families also needed emotional support from someone who truly understood. I became the person I'd once needed, someone steady, compassionate, and practical. My parents never contacted me directly again, though I occasionally heard updates through others. Dad had taken a job at a large accounting firm, now just another employee. Mom had withdrawn from her social circle, burdened by community judgment. Patricia had found work as a receptionist, still living at home, her dreams of a glamorous life replaced by the reality of starting over at 32 with a tarnished reputation. I didn't feel satisfaction at their struggles, but I didn't feel sympathy either. They were living with the choices they'd made, just as I was living with mine. The difference was that my choices, made in love and integrity, had led to purpose and peace. Theirs had led to isolation and regret. On the first anniversary of Tyler's passing, I visited his grave with fresh marigolds and a photo of Emma, the little girl now thriving under treatments made possible by Tyler's memorial fund. "You're saving lives, sweetheart," I whispered. Just like you always wanted. The years that followed brought new challenges and unexpected joys. I helped dozens of families through their battles, watched the Tyler Research Center grow, and built a chosen family. People who understood that love means showing up when it's hard, not just when it's convenient. My parents and sister had chosen comfort over compassion. I had chosen differently, and that made all the difference. They had lost their chance to be part of something truly meaningful, something greater than their narrow worries about money and social standing. The Tyler Research Center kept expanding, saving countless lives with the same trust fund they had once tried so hard to seize for a wedding that never even took place. Their greed had cost them more than just our relationship. It stripped them of the opportunity to contribute to Tyler's enduring legacy. I came to understand that family isn't defined solely by blood. It's about those who stand beside you in the darkest moments, who offer strength when everything feels broken, and who honor the memory of your loved ones rather than seek personal gain from it. Tyler's true family were the doctors striving to cure his illness, the researchers working late into the night in pursuit of better treatments, and the parents navigating the same difficult journey who found hope through his story. As I looked back from that heartbreaking phone call demanding the trust money to witnessing how Tyler's legacy reshaped children's cancer care, I realized something powerful. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is choosing to walk away from those unworthy of your heart, and instead, using that space to build something meaningful for those who truly are.